Graduation day is supposed to be a celebration, a moment when years of hard work finally pay off, when your family cheers the loudest as you cross the stage, and you feel like all the sacrifices were worth it. I'd pictured that moment 1,000 times. I imagined my parents in the front row, my mom's eyes shining with pride, my dad waving and snapping photos, maybe even a few embarrassing tears. But when the day finally arrived, the seats reserved for my family were empty. It wasn't a last-minute emergency or a work crisis. No, my parents had decided months before that they'd rather take a vacation to the Bahamas than watch their only child graduate. They didn't even try to hide it. "We need a break," my mom had said, flipping through glossy travel brochures at the kitchen table. "You'll have plenty more graduations, right?" My dad just shrugged, already dreaming of white sand and blue water. I tried to laugh it off, to pretend it didn't sting. But the truth was, it hurt more than I could admit. The weeks leading up to graduation were a blur of finals, late-night study sessions, and packing up my tiny dorm room. My friends' parents sent care packages and cards, promising to be there with flowers and balloons. Mine sent a text. "Good luck. Don't forget to water the plants before you move out." I told myself I didn't care, that I was used to being on my own. But every time someone asked if my family was coming, I felt the lie catch in my throat. The morning of graduation, the campus buzzed with excitement. Students in caps and gowns posed for photos, families gathered in clusters, laughter and hugs everywhere. I walked alone to the auditorium, clutching my program and trying not to look at the happy chaos around me. My best friend, Jamie, found me in the crowd. "Where are your parents?" she asked, scanning the sea of faces. I forced a smile. "They couldn't make it. Vacation plans." She frowned, but didn't push. She knew better than anyone how things were with my family. The ceremony itself was a blur. I listened to the speeches, clapped for my classmates, and waited for my name to be called. When it finally was, I walked across the stage, heart pounding, and accepted my diploma from the dean. The applause was polite, but not thunderous. No one shouted my name, no one waved a sign or threw confetti. I smiled for the camera, holding my diploma a little too tightly, and tried to ignore the ache in my chest. Afterward, Jamie's family swept me up in their celebration. Her mom hugged me, her dad took a million photos, and her little brother handed me a bouquet of wildflowers. For a few hours, I let myself pretend they were my family, that I belonged. But when the party was over and the campus emptied out, I walked back to my dorm alone. That night, I sat on my bed, scrolling through social media. My feed was full of graduation photos, smiling faces, proud parents, happy families. I posted a single photo of myself in my cap and gown, no caption. My parents didn't comment, didn't call, didn't even like the post. Instead, they sent a picture of themselves on the beach, drinks in hand, grinning at the camera. "Wish you were here," the caption read. I stared at the screen, anger and sadness swirling inside me. But I wasn't going to let them ruin this for me. I'd worked too hard, sacrificed too much to let their absence define my moment. I decided then and there that I would make them regret missing my graduation, not out of spite, but because I deserved to be seen, to be celebrated, to be valued. The next morning, I woke up to an email from the university. "Congratulations! You've been selected as the recipient of the Chancellor's Award for Outstanding Achievement." I blanked, rereading the message. The Chancellor's Award was the highest honor given to a graduate student, recognizing not just academic excellence, but leadership, service, and impact on the community. I'd applied months ago, never expecting to win. Now, my name would be announced in the local paper, featured on the university's website, and shared across social media. I called Jamie, barely able to contain my excitement. She screamed, then insisted we celebrate. We went out for breakfast, ordered pancakes and coffee, and talked about the future. For the first time, I felt proud, not just of my grades, but of everything I'd accomplished on my own. The news spread quickly. My professors emailed congratulations, old friends sent messages, and even people I barely knew reached out to say how inspired they were by my story. The university posted a photo of me on their homepage, along with a write-up about my achievements, my research, my volunteer work, my leadership in student organizations. My inbox filled with interview requests, scholarship offers, and job opportunities. But the best part was yet to come. That afternoon, the local news station called. They wanted to do a feature on me. Local student wins top university honor. I agreed, nervous but excited. The reporter came to campus, filmed me in my cap and gown, and asked about my journey. I told the truth about working 2 jobs, about late nights in the library, about doing it all without my family's support. I didn't mention the vacation, but I didn't have to. The story spoke for itself. When the segment aired that evening, my phone exploded with messages. Friends, teachers, even distant relatives reached out to congratulate me. And then finally, my parents called. The call came in just as I was about to turn off my phone for the night. My mom's name flashed on the screen, and for a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail. But curiosity, and maybe a little hope, got the better of me. I answered, bracing myself for whatever was coming. "Hi, honey!" My mom's voice was bright, a little too cheerful. In the background, I could hear the faint sound of waves and laughter. "We just saw you on the news! The Chancellor's Award! Why didn't you tell us you were getting something so important?" I took a breath, steadying my voice. "I didn't know until yesterday. It was a surprise for me, too." My dad chimed in, his tone a mix of pride and defensiveness. "We're so proud of you. Everyone at the resort saw the story. People kept coming up to us saying, 'Is that your daughter? You should have told us. We would have come back for the ceremony.'" I almost laughed at the irony. "You already had your tickets booked. I didn't want to ruin your vacation." There was a pause, the kind that stretches just a little too long. My mom tried to fill it with small talk. "Well, we're just so happy for you. You looked beautiful on TV. Your speech was so inspiring. Maybe when we get back, we can have a little celebration, just the 3 of us." I wanted to say so many things. I wanted to ask why it took a news story for them to notice me, why my achievements only mattered when strangers started paying attention. But I bit my tongue. I'd spent years chasing their approval, and I was tired. I didn't need their validation anymore. "Thanks, Mom. I appreciate it," I said, keeping my voice even. "I'm glad you saw it." After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my dorm room, letting the reality sink in. My parents had missed one of the biggest moments of my life, and now they wanted to make up for it with a belated celebration. Part of me wanted to accept, to pretend everything was fine, but another part of me, the one that had learned to stand on my own, knew I deserved more. The next few days were a whirlwind. The university invited me to speak at a special luncheon for scholarship donors and alumni. I stood at the podium, looking out at a room full of people who had supported me, even if they didn't know me personally. I talked about resilience, about finding family in unexpected places, about the power of believing in yourself when no one else does. The applause was thunderous, and for the first time, I felt truly seen. Jamie's family threw me a graduation party, complete with a homemade banner and a cake that read, "Congratulations, superstar." Her parents hugged me like I was their own, and her little brother made a speech about how I was his hero. I laughed, I cried, and I let myself be celebrated. Meanwhile, my parents kept sending texts and emails, trying to set up a time to get together. "We want to hear all about your plans," my mom wrote. "Let's have dinner when we get back." I kept my responses polite but distant. I wasn't ready to pretend nothing had happened. One afternoon, as I was packing up my dorm room, my phone buzzed with a message from my dad. "We're home. Can we take you out to dinner tonight?" I hesitated, then agreed. Maybe it was time to have the conversation I'd been avoiding. We met at a quiet restaurant near campus. My parents arrived first, dressed in their vacation clothes, still tanned from the sun. They hugged me, a little too tightly, and launched into stories about their trip, the beaches, the food, the people they'd met. I listened, nodding, waiting for them to ask about me. Finally, my mom leaned in, her expression serious. "We're really sorry we missed your graduation. We didn't realize how important it was to you." I looked at her, searching for sincerity. It was important. I worked really hard for that moment. I wanted you to be there. My dad reached across the table, squeezing my hand. We messed up. We thought you'd understand, that you'd be okay, but we should have been there. We're sorry. I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. I understand that you needed a break, but I needed you too. I needed you to show up for me. There was another pause, but this time it felt different, heavier, more honest. My mom wiped her eyes, her voice trembling. We're proud of you. We really are. We didn't realize how much we were missing. I smiled, a little sad, a little hopeful. I'm not angry. I just want you to see me. Not just when I'm on the news, but every day. We talked for a long time about the future, about my plans, about what I wanted for myself. For the first time, I felt like they were really listening. After dinner, we walked outside, the air cool and fresh. My parents hugged me again, promising to do better, to be there for the next big moment. I believed them, but I also knew that I didn't need their presence to validate my success. I had learned to celebrate myself, to find pride in my own achievements, to build a life that was mine. The summer after graduation was a season of change. I moved out of my dorm room and into a small apartment across town, a place that was entirely my own. The walls were bare at first, but I filled them with photos of friends, shelves of books, and reminders of everything I'd accomplished. I started my first real job at a nonprofit organization, working with students who, like me, had learned to rely on themselves when family support was missing. Every day I met young people with stories of struggle and resilience, and I saw pieces of myself in each of them. Jamie and I stayed close, meeting for coffee on weekends and sharing updates about our new lives. Her family continued to treat me like one of their own, inviting me to Sunday dinners and
holiday gatherings. I realized that family isn't always about blood. It's about the people who show up, who cheer you on, who make you feel seen. My parents tried to be more present. They called more often, asked about my job, sent care packages with snacks and little notes. It was awkward at first, as if we were all learning a new language. Sometimes their efforts felt forced, like they were trying to make up for lost time. But I appreciated the attempt. I could see they were trying, and that mattered. One afternoon, my mom called with news. "We saw your interview in the city paper," she said, her voice full of excitement. "Your story is everywhere. People keep asking us about you. We're so proud." I thanked her, but I couldn't help but notice that her pride seemed to grow with every headline, every public recognition. It was as if my achievements only counted when the world was watching. I tried not to let it bother me. I focused on my work, on the students I was helping, on building a life that felt authentic and meaningful. I volunteered for extra projects, mentored new hires, and even started a blog about my journey. The blog gained traction, and soon I was invited to speak at local schools and community events. I shared my story honestly, the loneliness, the disappointment, the determination to succeed anyway. At one event, a young girl approached me after my talk. She was quiet, her eyes downcast, but when she spoke, her voice was strong. "My parents never come to my school things either, but seeing you up there makes me think I can do something big too." I hugged her, feeling the weight of her words. In that moment, I knew that everything I'd been through had a purpose. As the months passed, my relationship with my parents continued to evolve. They came to visit my apartment, bringing housewarming gifts and taking me out to dinner. My dad helped me hang shelves. My mom fussed over my kitchen, and for a while it almost felt normal. But there were still moments when the old patterns crept in, when they talked more about their own adventures than about my life, when they seemed more interested in my public successes than in my everyday joys. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, I sat on my balcony, watching the city lights flicker. I thought about everything that had happened. The missed graduation, the news story, the way my parents had finally started to notice me, I realized that I was still searching for something, still hoping for a kind of validation that might never come. But then I remembered the girl from the event, the students I worked with, the friends who had become my chosen family. I realized that I didn't need my parents' approval to feel proud of myself. I had built a life that mattered, a life that made a difference, a life that was mine. That summer, I decided to take a trip of my own. I booked a flight to a city I'd always wanted to visit, packed a bag, and set off on an adventure. I explored museums, tried new foods, and wandered through neighborhoods with no destination in mind. I met people from all walks of life, each with their own story, their own dreams, their own struggles. I felt free, unburdened by expectations, open to whatever the world had to offer. When I returned home, I felt changed, more confident, more at peace, more certain of who I was. I called my parents to tell them about my trip, and for the first time, I didn't care whether they were impressed. I was proud of myself, and that was enough. The next big milestone came in the fall, when I was invited to speak at a national conference for young leaders. The event was a huge honor, and I was both nervous and excited. I called
parents to share the news, and to my surprise, they asked if they could attend. "We want to be there this time," my mom said. "We don't want to miss another important moment." I agreed, hopeful but cautious. On the day of the conference, I stood backstage, heart pounding, as the audience filled the auditorium. When I walked out onto the stage, I scanned the crowd and saw my parents sitting in the front row, their faces shining with pride. For the first time, I felt their support. Not just as a reaction to public recognition, but as a genuine desire to be part of my life. After my speech, they hugged me, tears in their eyes. "We're so proud of you," my dad said, "not just for what you've accomplished, but for who you are." I smiled, feeling a sense of closure, a sense that maybe, just maybe, we were finally finding our way back to each other. The months after the conference felt like a new chapter, not just for me, but for my relationship with my parents. We talked more often, and our conversations became less about what I'd achieved and more about how I was feeling, what I was learning, and what I wanted next. My mom started sending recipes and asking for updates on my work projects, not just the ones that made the news. My dad would call just to check in, sometimes sharing stories from his own early career, stories I'd never heard before. I realized that, for the first time, we were building a relationship as adults, not just as parent and child. It wasn't perfect. There were still awkward silences, still moments when I felt like I was reaching for something just out of grasp. But there was progress, and that was enough. At work, I was promoted to lead a new initiative focused on helping first-generation college students navigate the challenges of higher education. The project was close to my heart, and I poured myself into it, determined to make a difference. I organized workshops, created mentorship programs, and partnered with local businesses to provide internships. The students I worked with reminded me of myself, eager, anxious, and full of potential. One afternoon, as I was leaving the office, I got a call from Jamie. She said, "Guess what?" Her voice bubbling with excitement. "My parents want to throw you a party. They say you're basically their second daughter, and they want to celebrate your promotion." I laughed, touched by their kindness. Tell them I'd love that. The party was small, but perfect. Just a handful of close friends, Jamie's family, and a few colleagues from work. We ate homemade food, played board games, and shared stories late into the night. Jamie's mom gave a toast, her eyes shining. "We're so proud of you. You've shown us all what it means to persevere, to keep going, even when things are hard. You're family to us, always." I blinked back tears, overwhelmed by the love in the room. In that moment, I realized that I had everything I needed. I had built a community, a support system,
a family of my own choosing. A few weeks later, my parents invited me over for dinner. When I arrived, I found the table set with my favorite dishes, candles flickering, and a homemade banner that read, "We're proud of you." My mom hugged me tightly, and my dad pulled out a chair for me at the head of the table. Over dinner, we talked about everything: my job, their travels, the books we were reading, the movies we wanted to see. There was laughter, there were stories, and for the first time, there was no tension, no unspoken disappointment, just love. After dessert, my dad cleared his throat. "We know we haven't always been there the way you needed us to be. We missed out on a lot. But we want you to know that we see you now. We're proud of you, not just for what you've done, but for who you are." My mom nodded, tears in her eyes. "We're so sorry for missing your graduation."
We can't change the past, but we want to be here for you now, for every moment that matters. I smiled, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. Thank you. That's all I ever wanted. As I drove home that night, I thought about how far we'd come. The pain of that empty seat at graduation would never fully disappear, but it no longer defined me. I had learned to celebrate myself, to find joy in my own accomplishments, to build a life that was full and meaningful, with or without their approval. The next big milestone came unexpectedly. My blog was picked up by a national publication, and suddenly my story was reaching thousands of people across the country. I received messages from students, parents, and teachers, all sharing their own experiences of feeling overlooked, of striving for recognition, of learning to stand tall in the face of disappointment. One message stood out. A mother who wrote, "Thank you for reminding me to show up for my daughter. I almost missed her big moment, but your story changed my mind." I realized then that my journey wasn't just about me. It was about everyone who had ever felt invisible, everyone who had ever longed to be seen. I was invited to speak at more events, to share my story with wider audiences. Each time I told the truth, not just about the pain, but about the healing, the growth, the power of choosing your own path. I encouraged others to celebrate themselves, to find pride in their own achievements, to build the families and communities they needed. Through it all, my parents were there, sometimes in the front row, sometimes cheering from afar, but always present, always supportive. We still had our differences, still stumbled over old habits, but we were learning, together, how to be a family. As the year drew to a close, I looked back on everything that had happened: the missed graduation, the new story, the journey from disappointment to pride. I realized that in the end, my parents' absence had taught me the most important lesson of all: that I was enough, just as I was. The holidays arrived, and for the first time in years, I felt a sense of belonging that wasn't forced or fragile. My parents invited me home, and I accepted, not out of obligation, but because I wanted to. The house was decorated with twinkling lights, and the smell of cinnamon drifted from the kitchen. We cooked together, laughed over old stories, and even watched my graduation video, my parents insisting on replaying the news segment, pride shining in their eyes. On New Year's Eve, we sat around the table, each sharing something they were grateful for. When it was my turn, I looked at my parents and smiled. I'm grateful for second chances, for learning that it's never too late to show up for each other. My mom squeezed my hand, her eyes misty. We're grateful for you, for your strength, your kindness, and for forgiving us. That night, as fireworks lit up the sky, I realized how much had changed. The pain of that empty seat at graduation was still a part of my story, but it no longer defined me. I had found my own way, built my own family, and learned to celebrate myself, even when others didn't. In the months that followed, I continued to grow, at work, in my friendships, and in my relationship with my parents. We still had our moments, still stumbled over old habits, but we always found our way back to each other. I knew now that love wasn't about perfection or always getting it right. It was about trying, about showing up, about choosing each other again and again. One afternoon, as I walked through the city, I passed a group of students in caps and gowns, their families cheering and snapping photos. I smiled, remembering my own graduation, the ache of being alone, and the pride of standing on my own. I wanted to tell them that their worth wasn't measured by who showed up, but by the courage it took to keep going, to keep believing in themselves. Looking back, I wouldn't change a thing. My parents skipped my graduation for a vacation, and yes, they regretted it when they saw the news. But that regret became a turning point, a chance for all of us to grow, to forgive, to start again. I learned that sometimes the recognition you crave has to come from within, and that the most important person to celebrate you is yourself. So, if you're listening to this, if you've ever felt invisible or overlooked, know that your story matters. You are enough, just as you are. And sometimes the best revenge is living a life that makes you proud, no matter who's watching.